Welcome back to our channel. Today, we're diving into some of the dirtiest tricks used in war throughout history. You won't believe some of these tactics. We're talking about moves that make you question whether anything is sacred in the pursuit of victory. So buckle up, because we're about to go on a wild ride through the muddiest trenches of military history. Let's rewind to a time before drones and tanks, back when a good spear to the gut was the height of technological advancement. In those days, battles were fought up close and personal, with every clash of metal and every drop of blood. Even in ancient times, armies knew a thing or two about fighting dirty. They had to be resourceful and ruthless, using whatever means necessary to gain the upper hand. Nothing says fighting dirty quite like biological warfare. This was a tactic that turned the very environment into a weapon. Sometimes it was as simple as catapulting diseased corpses over enemy lines. The sight alone was enough to demoralize the enemy, but the real damage came from the diseases that spread like wildfire. Siege warfare was all about waiting the enemy out, and nothing speeds up that process like a raging epidemic. The besieged would be trapped, with disease spreading rapidly through their ranks. One gruesome example comes from the Mongols during the siege of Caffa in the 14th century. Their innovative use of biological warfare was both terrifying and effective. They catapulted plague-infected bodies into the city, which did not end well for the people of Caffa. The plague spread quickly, decimating the population and forcing the city to surrender. Sometimes it was about poisoning the enemy's water supply. Contaminating water sources could cripple an army, leaving them weak and unable to fight. Ancient warfare was brutal, unforgiving, and absolutely riddled with disease. Soldiers faced not only the threat of enemy weapons, but also the invisible killers of infection and plague. The Trojan Horse. It's the ultimate symbol of deception and cunning. The story, in a nutshell, goes like this. After a decade of fighting, the Greeks built a giant wooden horse, hid soldiers inside, and pretended to sail away in defeat. The Trojans, thinking it was a gift, wheeled it into their city. The Greeks snuck out under the cover of darkness, opened the city gates, and sacked Troy. The moral of the story: never trust a giant wooden animal, especially if it's from the Greeks. They invented democracy, but they also invented deception on an epic scale. War is rarely black and white. It's a complex tapestry woven with threads of heroism, tragedy, and deception. It's a messy, complicated affair, often fueled by murky motives and questionable justifications. The lines between right and wrong blur, and the truth becomes a casualty. Few tactics are as controversial as the false flag operation. These operations are shrouded in secrecy and often leave a trail of confusion and mistrust. A false flag operation is a covert operation designed to deceive the enemy or the public into thinking something is happening when it's really not. It's a strategy that plays on the perceptions and emotions of those involved. The term originates from naval warfare, where ships would fly the flags of other countries to get close to their enemies. This tactic allowed them to launch surprise attacks, catching their adversaries off guard. One infamous example is the Gleiwitz Incident, a staged attack on a German radio station by Nazi forces disguised as Polish soldiers in 1939. This event was meticulously planned to create a false narrative. This event was used as a pretext for the invasion of Poland, kicking off World War II. The deception was successful, and the world was plunged into a devastating conflict. During the Vietnam War, the US government considered Operation Northwoods, which involved committing acts of terrorism on American soil and blaming it on Cuba to justify an invasion. The plan was audacious and chilling in its implications. Thankfully, the plan was scrapped. The potential consequences of such an operation would have been catastrophic, further eroding public trust. False flag operations exploit our trust, manipulate our fears, and make it harder to distinguish between the good guys and the bad guys. They create a landscape where truth is obscured and deception reigns. In the fog of war, truth is often the first casualty. The chaos and confusion of battle make it easy for lies to take root and spread. When everyone's waving a false flag, it's hard to know who's really steering the ship. The waters of war are treacherous, and the truth is often lost in the waves of deception. Picture this: you're losing a war. The situation is dire and the enemy is closing in on all fronts. The enemy is advancing relentlessly. Your troops are vastly outnumbered and your strategic reserves are running dangerously low. What do you do in such a desperate situation? One drastic measure you might consider is a scorched earth policy. A scorched earth policy involves systematically destroying anything that might be of use to the enemy as you retreat. This includes burning crops, demolishing buildings, and rendering resources unusable. The logic behind this tactic is straightforward. If the enemy can't use your resources, they can't turn them against you. It's a way to deny them any advantage. One of the most famous examples of this strategy comes from Russia during Napoleon's invasion in 1812. As the Russians retreated, they burned everything from Moscow to the ground, leaving nothing for Napoleon's troops to capture or use. Faced with a brutal Russian winter and a starving, demoralized army, Napoleon was ultimately forced to retreat, marking a significant turning point in his campaign. Scorched earth tactics have not been confined to the annals of history. They have been employed in more recent conflicts as well. During the Vietnam War, the US military implemented scorched earth tactics by destroying villages, crops, and vast areas of forest to disrupt the Viet Cong's supply lines and hideouts. While these policies can effectively slow down the enemy, they leave behind a legacy of widespread destruction and deep-seated resentment among the affected civilian populations. Scorched earth policies are indeed a double-edged sword, offering short-term military gains at the cost of long-term humanitarian and ethical consequences. The Cold War. A time of geopolitical tension and some of the most creative mind games the world has ever seen. Psychological warfare, or PSYOP, is all about messing with your enemy's minds. During the Cold War, both the United States and the Soviet Union were masters of psychological warfare. They used propaganda, disinformation, and fear-mongering to undermine each other's ideologies. One effective tool was propaganda, with both sides painting themselves as the good guys and their opponents as evil. The Cold War was a time when paranoia ran rampant, and the line between reality and fabrication became increasingly blurred. It was a testament to the power of psychological warfare. Thanks for watching. If you found these war tactics shocking, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe for more intriguing content. See you next time. And remember, the next time you're facing a seemingly insurmountable obstacle, just be glad you're not dealing with a giant wooden horse or a plague-ridden corpse catapult. Because when it comes to war, truth and fair play are often the first casualties. Stay informed, stay skeptical, and for goodness sake, if someone offers you a free horse, maybe just say no.